That game was nuts. Coming up, we break down game number 3, first one back at the Barclays Center for the Brooklyn Nets. And my goodness, within millimeters, in and out, everything so close, literally and figuratively, to being a much more interesting series going forward. We talk about the Brooklyn Nets loss coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets. Every single day over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie. He's the owner-operator of DFSR for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast and the now 0-2 in the playoff New Jersey Devils on the Devils Puck Luck podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're free on all those great platforms. And Doug, I've got an ulcer. How about you?
This one stings, man. This was a rough one. I really thought the Nets had this. It really looked like it was going to be there. I mean, they make a crazy second half comeback and come out really out of the gates in a game that looked like they were probably all but dead. And then you really start believing late in the game that it's going to happen. And then they were just able to, wrestle defeat from the jaws of victory because they we'll talk about some of the stuff that went on here, but you can kind of hear it in my voice. Like from an emotional level, this one was pretty draining. Like I thought there was going to be a chance they get back in the series. They give Philly a punch, make them sweat a little bit. I don't think they would have won the series, but get out. Maybe
I'll tell you right now, man, like maybe they wouldn't have, whatever, but like there's so much about this game, the physicality of Philadelphia, and saying like, boy, they're so much bigger than the Nets. But like Nic Claxton is going toe to toe with Joel Embiid, and even beyond that, you see Joel Embiid and his ankle is laboring. You have James Harden kind of struggling here. Like I know we're going to get into the late specific sequences here, but it is the emotional reaction is like gut check time. Game 3, first one at home. And it looked like the Nets were capable and did go toe-to-toe, specifically in the second half, because by the end of the first half, you thought you did everything you physically and emotionally, and it was your biggest deficit at half so far this series. And then you do come out in the third quarter, and you do flip the three-point shooting script after only having 12 in the first half. Like, I really thought that they were going to get this one. There's a lot of foul discussions to have here. There's plenty of things to break down here, but nothing more deflating than the late game sequences, some triples that look like they were all but in, and then the big one for Maxey. And frankly, I can now think about it logically, but that is a heartbreaking inbounds pass between Royce O'Neal and Mikal Bridges that in some ways sums up what this team is still missing: time to play together.
Yeah, so, and it's funny too, because it really stinks when games that are especially are pretty hard fought go down to like these sort of mistakes at the end too, which is the other part that like ends up being a really deflating issue, because this game, I mean, it wasn't the cleanest game of all time. I mean, far from it. This game was kind of just like on drugs for a while. Like there was a lot of stuff that was just completely off the rails in this game. But like for a game like that, that's kind of just like end to end, two teams are trading punches, even if it doesn't look really that pretty. There's clearly a lot of emotions in this game. I mean, these guys were really amped. These guys were really, really amped up. It's like, shown through some of the physicality. Yeah. And so to have the game end on a whimper, I mean, well, it didn't end on a whimper for Philly, but like that to end on a whimper like that it's rough, because I don't think that like encapsulated what this game was. This was a really exciting game. I mean, I don't get too emotionally invested here. And my heart was beating like pretty hard, because it was a full on playoff atmosphere. Yeah. So for it to end like that, and to go down 3-0, which is probably just, the no hope sequence of the series. Yeah, it ends up being a real bummer, but I do have to give it to Brooklyn. I do think, that aside, they threw a pretty good punch here. Like this was a team that we know is outmanned, out-talented, outsized, really out everything in this series to Philly. And I thought that effort-wise, you really couldn't have asked anything more on that end. I don't
No,
think. Like, I think
no.
this was like a full max effort game. Well, I'll go through all the specifics of it later, but like, I don't know. It's hard to be too upset with the actual team. You're just really upset with the outcome.
Yeah, 102.97 is the final, and I think you encapsulated it correctly there. Like, a lot of times we were saying this before we started. Like, I always have a sense of kind of where the box score is throughout the course of the game, and those things can matter. And I know when guys are just eye test tells me they're having bad shooting performances, but this was a game where I didn't care that there are plenty of guys that did not perform to their stat lines or did not, check the boxes that they needed to in this game because to what you said. It was like, but they were all playing with that level of emotion, that level of, I know, cliche words, heart. Like, there's something to be said for a team that clearly is going to struggle to get a game or maybe two off of the Philadelphia 76ers and coming out and kind of saying, maybe we'll just beat you on raw emotion. Like, maybe we'll just beat you on it because we really want one of these games more than you do. And they narrowly accomplished that in spite of the deficiencies that we know they have relative to the matchup.
Yeah, and that's where it really stings the most, right? Is because you did feel like they felt like they had this. They've had Philly on the ropes. And by the way, they did not on the ropes the whole game. I mean, they were losing pretty handily at halftime, and in a game that looked
Down
like
11.
it really could go sideways.
Yep.
I that was my feeling going out of halftime. I was like, oof, this might not take much for this game to go really downhill, and to like come out with really such energy to really close the entire gap and then stay there for the rest of the time. That's the part where you really start believing. And when you are sort of examining this team, and I think when you're examining this playoff series on a high level, there has to be an understanding that like there's really no functional world where they were going to win this series. I think everyone knows this. Like, it would have been one of the greatest upsets of all time if they were won just based on like Vegas betting odds going into the beginning of the series. So I don't think that's even the expectation. But when you get to the series and you get this close, even with the understanding that this team is not going to go to the finals, right? Or like maybe even make it to the second round, there's still a part of you that wants to see it through because one, it's just more fun to watch basketball. Two, it's one of these things like you wouldn't mind figuratively bloodying up the Sixers a little bit on their way here, like out of the first round. And I think that's what this game was so close to representing until at the very end, it just wasn't.
And if the Nets had won this game, I'd be on full tilt heading into Saturday, 1 p.m. because whatever you think the Nets are capable of doing in this series, you're one win away from tying it, right? Yeah. And you just mentioned it there about you start to play this team physically, and you thought if you stole this game, you could start to dream on, hey, there's some wear and tear getting put on key figures for the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Nets were able to come out of some of those skirmishes clean. Nic Claxton's case, narrowly avoiding some serious complications. So that, in theory, would at least have carried over this momentum a little bit. Coming up here in a second, we'll get into some of the stat lines here. I think there was a different tactic taken by Jacques Vaughn and the Brooklyn Nets on the offensive end specifically here. We'll get into that and also into these fouls. And man, I won't take anything away from Joel Embiid being an MVP level player, but boy, does that dude fall like a sack of potatoes when the wind blows. We'll get into that next.
All right, before we do that, going to talk to you about Nissan's Most Electric Player of the Week, brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. I got a couple of candidates here for the Nissan Player of the Week. We could go Nic Claxton, plus 13 in this game in 28 minutes, was 18, 4, and 2, and absolutely taken it to Embiid. You like the fierce elegance in that one. I'm also going to throw in Mikal Bridges just because, 9 for 26 from the field. This was also a guy picking up James Harden and Tyrese Maxey nearly full court for the entire game and getting the most shots up for the Nets. That's what you like to see. Brilliantly fierce, fiercely elegant, suddenly powerful, elegantly powerful. 2023 Nissan Ariya packs pin to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com.
Okay, so the Nets do lose this game, and it's another opportunity to shoot. Hold on now.
Whoa, come
on. But this is another game where I look at Nicholas Claxton and I go, my goodness, I have to stop saying, well, he is undersized, though. He is thin because he physically was going toe-to-toe with Joel Embiid. And I'm not going to belabor this around Joel. And what I do feel like, and every superstar does this, And you prefer to have a guy that is as good as he is that also maybe does some of this. But that's some weak stuff throughout this game. And I'm not even going to get specifically to what went on underneath the basket and the idea. First of all, he's flopping all over the place. So that's a disaster. Royce O'Neal puts his elbow to his, rib. And I don't mean with force. He just extends his arm out and he throws himself down. And guess what? Good for Brooklyn for playing him physically. And he ended up hurting himself more by throwing himself around than anything the Nets did to him. But that sequence underneath the basket, when he goes down, and Nic Claxton, he ended up getting ejected because he was doing some of the taunting. He was willing to do that. But he effectively steps over him. Joel Embiid tries to punt his groin through the Barclays Center into the parking lot. I cannot imagine the world where it's yeah, but he didn't catch you. He didn't catch you full. So guess what? It's going to be a tech, flagrant one. Let's keep playing. There were some sequences in that regard from a refereeing perspective that it's a physical game. But if that had happened in the third quarter and James Harden ends up getting ejected for something far less egregious, if that had happened later in the game, I could have seen that being ejection. It's a really big moment inside of what was happening here because the Nets were frustrating the heck out of Embiid. And frankly, man, I'll go the extra step here. Embiid finishes this game 38 minutes, 5 of 13. He comes in and out, has to go back to the locker room multiple times, clearly dealing with an ankle. He stepped down on Cam Johnson's foot at one point and then was struggling to keep himself up. 14 points. Somebody said this in the comments the last couple of days in our post games about how we've been complimenting the Nets of you've been containing Joel Embiid. And they scoffed at it with everything else. They did it again. They have played Joel Embiid incredibly well over these 3 games, which makes it even more infuriating that you haven't been able to get a win out of this.
Yeah, so a lot there.
Feel free to rein that in if you can, Doug.
What's that?
Feel free to rein that in if you can.
Yeah. So, okay. So for starters, with the Claxton thing, with his ejection, he's in a weird spot because one, it's a bonehead play. It's boneheaded to be taunting right there. You're already on thin ice. You just can't do it. On the other hand, I kind of get it because for him to be able to even live in this world with Embiid, he has to be fully amped up and it's hard to toggle at correct times. And we already know Claxton's a pretty emotional dude to begin with. So on the one hand, it was completely brutal to lose him because he was playing really, really well. He was out there completely winning his minutes. And for him to get tossed at that point really put them in just a pretty bad spot with the Embiid thing. On the flip side, where you're talking about with Embiid, it was tough to watch. I get why people like Embiid. He's great. I get it. There are elements to the game which are a little head scratchy, which is one, it was a clear kick up on Claxton. Should it have been a flagrant 2? It's pretty close. I don't know. I probably wouldn't have done it, but I wouldn't have scoffed if they had done it. It's a pretty close one. And I'm totally with you. But he had multiple other plays that were way more egregious. I hip checks Claxton into the stands, sits on Cam Johnson's head. I know they got tangled up, but he's also not avoiding situations like that at all. And so I don't know. It's really tough. I'm really never an advocate for like guys out of games because I actually don't like games that end like that. It's way worse. I'd rather just have everyone play, right? And there's these guys are high emotions, and I'm totally with you. Like the Embiid thing, it's a little cringy. It's on the ground. It's flopping like a fish. The guy's 300 pounds. Like he should never fall but he should never fall by maintaining contact. And finally, the last point of what you're saying, I'm with you on the reining him in. I will say that's a little, it's a little skewed about how much they contained him because they made such an effort to like double team him in even in unnecessary situations that it did drive his overall numbers down.
Yep.
But it made it really super simple for a lot of the other guys. I don't know. I'm going just as long here, but like those are most of my Embiid thoughts. It's like it's hard to give him tons of credit. It's hard to take too much away. It was a real tough game to watch. Him not getting kicked out. I'm not gonna cry about it, but I could have. It would have made sense if it happened. Also,
let me put it this way. I'll put it into this, and because you kind of touched on it there, I would have preferred if nobody got kicked out. Because I would have preferred to see Nic Claxton going toe-to-toe with him down the stretch, right? I would have liked to have seen how some of those sequences, a couple of rebound opportunities there late, and just having Claxton be a part of it. Claxton was clearly effective on the offensive end as Joel Embiid is being hampered by his ankle. So there, and Claxton was hitting his free throws. So even that could have been in the positive for the Brooklyn Nets as well. And then James Harden gets ejected as well. Fine. Keep everybody in the game. To your point, I'd rather just see the full strength battle here. And that's what we got for so much of that second half there. Go ahead.
Well, Harden's thing was a total joke. There's no love lost here for Harden. So like whatever, him getting kicked out for that was the most head scratching thing of all. I mean, do you think there was any world where he was getting kicked out for that? It didn't look like a super
what's
clean
funny?
play, but it didn't look dirty. I don't know. It was weird.
No, in the initial look of it, I thought like, oh man, he went for the groin there, but then they showed the reverse angle. I was like, oh, he catches him like in the low rib. Like, I mean, like in the stomach, he gets him in the stomach. So when he gets kicked out, that's probably why I bring up the Joel Embiid situation. Cause I'm like, well, that just feels like you're making up for what you could have or should have, done possibly earlier in the game. That was an odd one to me for sure. So I'm not going to be heavy-handed about the things that impacted the Brooklyn Nets' chances there. And that overall, by the way, is where I think the referees were just, kind of scrambling to have some type of control over this game when clearly they maybe didn't take as much command early on as they could have. Before we do talk about some of the other things here, I will just note we can start to get in on the different mentality that the Brooklyn Nets brought to this game. They chose to be more physical. They chose to drive at the basket more. And in some ways it worked. In some ways it was effective. You got some guys into foul trouble, Joel Embiid specifically. Okay. But man, to say they forgot to strike the balance, to Jacques Vaughn's tenor, who said we want 53 pointers in this game. They had 12 in the first half. Then they come out in the third quarter, they take up 10, but they only finished the game with 30. So it's like there was a weird imbalance around how the Brooklyn Nets wanted to play this game on a possession-to-possession basis. And in some ways, you can make the case that's what was disruptive to what matters most. These opportunities late, these big shots where some guys who struggle don't make them. But it's another example now, 3 games in. You've tried several different approaches here, and maybe it's just the reality that the team you're playing is better, and you're always fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, I think intensity wise, the Nets played like this was an elimination game. So you can't fault that at all. Like, I don't think that, and they left it all out there. I mean, these guys played a million minutes. Bridges played 43, Cam played 40, Cam Johnson played 44, Dinwiddie played 42. Claxton would have played a lot more before he got tossed. DFS was up to 36 and O'Neal with 30. I mean, they played basically a 5-man rotation. And I kind of thought that was going to be the case. I kind of projected Mikal to play 43 to 44 minutes in this game, just because I was like, they're going to play this one like they have to win. And that's what they did. I agree with most of that. I don't think I would have made any other changes. I do credit them a little bit for the energy here. But it's a hard one to credit, because you should bring all the energy if like you're trying to win the game. Right. Strategically, I'm with you. Like, I don't think the moves here were, look, okay. How much can you fault anybody here? The game was tied with no time to go. It was know what I mean? Someone's got to lose. It happened to be the Nets in this case. It's hard to fault it too much when the game is this close in the end. And we'll talk, some specifics of this other stuff here in a second. But I do, we're coming in post game here. We're recording right after the game. This was an emotional game even to watch. So I think like formulating a full, top-down opinion of everything that happened here is a little tough in the moment, right? But for the most part, again, I have like one bone to pick with strategy, and that was just like the mass doubling and tripling of the doubling of Embiid, like at the 3-point line. I feel like that was kind of pointless. That's my big bone to pick, but rotationally, rotationally and energy-wise, I don't really have any. I think what they did was mostly correct.
So coming up here in a second, we'll talk about a couple additional key sequences in this game, individual matchups beyond Joel Embiid and Nic Claxton, and frankly, what maybe came down to needing Mikal Bridges to have a Mikal Bridges type game and him not quite getting there. Not his fault, but that's the difference between the Nets being able to win this one as opposed to coming up short.
All right, before we get to that, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you'll be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage, That's the eBay My Garage, not my own garage. And look for the green check to know the part will fill or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Okay, so you talk about those matchups, and I mentioned Mikal Bridges there. There's almost an irony to the fact that he goes 4 of 7 from downtown, the area that he hadn't been able to connect on with consistency in the first 2 games, but he ends up doubling up the next closest shooters in Dinwiddie and Cam Johnson, who each had 12 attempts respectively from the field, 26 shot attempts, 9 of 26, 26 points. Coming into this game, I said you need Bridges, Dinwiddie, and Johnson to combine for 70 points and then have the other guys contribute what they normally do, and you can get across the line on victory here. I was pleasantly surprised by the time you end up looking at it that Spencer Dinwiddie got there. We mentioned driving the lane, getting the basket, got to the foul line 10 times, knocked down 8 of them. Now he misses a crucial one in the late sequences here, going 1 of 2 when he does get to the line on the Joel Embiid foul, PJ Tucker foul, excuse me. But he gave you 20 points. Cam Johnson goes 6 of 12 from the field, 17 points. But like you needed a 35-point game out of Mikal Bridges. I'm not knocking him for it. It's just that's what you need when you want to win a game like this.
Yeah, it was just tough, man, because I'm never going to fault Bridges here. The guy I mentioned it at the part when we were talking about the Nissan read, like he picked up Harden. Like, I mean, they weren't like crazy like college basketball full court, but he started that picking him up like 3/4 court, at least on a soft on a soft press, and did the same for Maxey when Harden was out of the game. Like, there's almost no player in the league that is going to has the highest usage on the team and also do that kind of stuff defensively. It just doesn't happen. Like these guys just don't do it. And so even from that angle, playing that many minutes and just doing that on both ends, it deserves an incredible just a pat on the back. Like he wasn't efficient. It was just a non-efficient game. It's like there's no judgments here about like him as a player. I think he's been great. They needed him to be 10% more efficient and they win the game. Like he took a few 4 shots over the Embiid drop. I was fine with those. Like, I just think in general, there's nothing really to say about him. Like in terms of like negativity in what you're saying as a whole for those 3 guys. Look, scoring's been a real challenge for this team. It's been the only times they were able to really score with consistency here was when they were able to get out in transition, when they were able to get cross matches coming the other way and push the pace. Other than that, half court was just it was too tough for them. And it's been like that the whole series, and it was really unlikely to change. The reason they got back into the game in the second half is because they pushed the pace, they pushed the tempo, they were able to force some turnovers, and they were able to get into the Philly D before the Philly D was able to set. The second the Philly D was able to set, it was just kind of over. Like they had no chance. And that's kind of, to me, the story of just like the overall offense.
We look inside the numbers. Nic Claxton's the only guy with a positive plus minus in this game, 8 of 9 from the field. We know everything that he was accomplishing with his 18 points. Him, though, and also Joe Harris. Just the second back-to-back games for Joey. +1 on a 4-minute spurt, 0 for 3 from the field, 0 for 3 from downtown.
Can I say one thing about Harris here? And it's like, we'll never talk about a guy that plays only 4 minutes because whatever. And I know Nets fans out there like just can't stand the guy and come playoff time. Whatever. It is what it is. There was a chance here in this game. He took 3 open threes, and it would have just absolutely brought Barclays to the ground. Like, because it was right in that run. It was right in that time. It happens. It's just a streaky by nature, and you're gonna miss more of them than you make, right? That's just the nature of the shot. And if there was ever a time for this guy to dust off a little bit of like what people have come to, and they even said it on the national broadcast, which I couldn't believe, but like this was the time. It was like, if he hits just 2 of those, that place comes crashing down. Philly would have buckled, like because they had it and they didn't go out. And there's a couple other ones the Nets had. There was a Cam Johnson in and out that was all the way down, a DFS one that was all the way down. There was a few of these, but that Harris one, those ones stung.
It was, it's funny because it was strategic from Jock Vaughn. Joe Harris was not playing in this game,
No.
but he saw Jock Vaughn. And by the way, and to your point, just in terms of the supporting cast, right? O'Neal, 1 of 5. Cam Thomas, he was 0 of 2 on his attempts as well. So nobody else is getting there for you, in terms of having somebody off the bench be quality. Jock Vaughn picked the spot to say, like, here is your moment. They're gonna be there for you because they're the last guy that they're concerned about. And like you said, if those go down, man, it would have been a really nice moment for Joe. And we don't need to go belabor it, but that does kind of also tie up the emotions of this game, because every single possession that second half felt like it was ratcheted up to the level of, these are make or break moments for this game, for this possession, for this guy's career, for this, like everything was dialed up to 1,000 on there. Do we want to, you can tell me how you want to close this out in terms of, we talked about it leading into this one, that Cam Thomas should play. He did play for, a couple of minutes there.
11 minutes,
He got to the mid-range on 11 minutes, 3 of 6 from the field, said 0 of 2 from downtown, 6 points. The plus minus doesn't matter. It's not a big deal there. I do think that we kind of got exactly the sample that you and I have discussed about the good and the bad. Yep, he can take the ball in his hands and he can get you a bucket. He also gave you possessions where he ISO'd that thing down until there was no time left. He came in, and this is jitters and nerves for sure, 2 instant turnovers. Like, I don't know how you come out of that and feel like, Cam Thomas could have been the answer in this game, or that he would have brought something different. I think you played these tight rotations because these are the guys that you think can get you across this line here. And everybody else, Joe Harris, Cam Thomas, and anyone off the bench included, it's a coin flip whether or not they're going to have an impact, if at all.
Yeah, I'm glad he played. I'm glad they did it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he got out there. He got extended run. He played the second most bench minutes of anybody. It's not saying much. It's like really no one played outside of Royce, but I thought it didn't look amazing. But the thing is, like, what is he going to do? The guy's barely played for weeks. Yep. So it's like, it's really hard to expect someone, especially with the way what his game's predicated on, to come in and just cook after having not played for a really, really long time in like meaningful minutes. I have nothing great to say. I thought it was just like basically what you expect. Like that's what he wants to do. So he jacked up a couple weird shots on the shot clock. Like he looked pretty nice in the mid range. They picked him off. They picked him out on defense a few times and he made that pretty easy for Philly. And that's just what's going to happen with him. I'm not surprised they went to Harris in the second rotation. I think they needed just floor spacing, and I think what they were going for in that case with the Harris thing, is my guess, is instead of Cam in the second half, is like floor spacing and quick decisions. Like, right. Yeah, you'll live with the results, but I think they wanted the decision making to at least be quick, and like that Harris will do that. Like, he didn't make the shots. So that sucks. But I think what they wanted to do was like keep pace, jack threes, no questions about it, and that was going to be it. Hey, I take umbrage with whether that's the correct strategy or not. I just think that's probably what they were doing. But yeah, I just to go back to the top, like, yep. I think you can still hear it in my voice. I do feel this was just a really big letdown. Like, it was, I don't let these losses stick too far with me, because it's basketball is basketball. But I mean, do you feel the same thing? I feel like, like this would have just been Thursday night. It's late. You're like, this would have been real nice talking about a W going into Saturday. And knowing it was just so damn close to not pull it out sucks. And that's kind of like the nature of where you are with playoff basketball at this point in the season.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I'm dialing it up and firing different commentary shots across this entire podcast episode as a veiled attempt to cover up the fact that I'm just incredibly bummed out that they didn't win the game. Like you said it, it takes you sometimes a little bit longer to get emotionally invested in a game. I was emotionally invested when the game started, and it only got dialed up from there. And because, like, you look at these individual performances, you've got guys that it matters for. Mikal Bridges, he's the new leader of this team, so you want the win for him, right? You want it for Nic Claxton because he's coming into his own and taking on this absolutely Herculean task of defending and attacking Joel Embiid. Cam Johnson, I mean, even Spencer Dinwiddie coming back here and having 2 lackluster performances, and there's so many basketball related non-basketball narratives that are being built around this team as we approach the offseason that these games matter. And if I want to pull myself out a little bit here, because we won't be back in before the post game on Saturday, I will say when we entered this series, you and I agreed, I think rightfully, that play this team hard, make them earn whatever it was going to be, 4-game sweep, 5 games, 6 games. And they have done that. It turns out that that's not good enough now because they almost could have won this game and that would have felt a lot differently. But they have checked all the boxes that we said we wanted them to. It's just getting maybe that symbolic win that says, yes, you can play with these teams as you continue to grow and add another piece potentially.
Yeah. I mean, there's still many guys away here. That's just the nature of where they are talent wise. I think we knew that. This has not changed my opinion on a macro level, really one way or the other. It's just that, just as someone that roots for the Nets, it's nice to watch the Nets win. And when it's close, you'd like to see them pull it out. And that's what it is. And, maybe trip Philly up here a little bit on whatever run they're going to make. Although, it's hard to feel. It's weirdly like Philly's up 3-0. I guess we'll talk about this more. It's like they're up 3-0 in this thing. It's like you don't feel so much more confident about them. I don't think. Like if you're pro Sixers. All right, that might be a talk for a different day. We're gonna get out of here. We'll hang around in YouTube here for a few. Got a bunch of people in there. Really appreciate everyone that jumped in. Going hot and heavy here in the YouTube comments with pretty similar themes around some of the players here. I think. If you have a question, put in at Locked On Nets. Keep it clean. We'll try to bring it up, answer some of the questions as we roll through YouTube Live. If you are not subscribed to YouTube, make sure you go to youtube.com/LockedOnNets.
Always protect the McNuggets. That's Cheeseburger Eddie from The Longest Yard.
Oh, there you go. One of the all-time great poets. We will be back again after Saturday's game for that, and then in a second here as extra content on YouTube, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Oh, it's the Post Podcast. I will say one thing. Thanks to everybody for coming in here. Obviously, first and foremost, Doug tripped me up there at the end of the episode, asking how I felt emotionally about the whole situation. Now I'm kind of bummed out and depressed. So I was doing my best to keep it on a high level about the game. It really was a bummer. One thing we didn't mention in there is that no Seth Curry in this game either, which is just interesting. We talked about it all being relative. Yes, he's scoring, but are the minutes winning or losing, the defensive liability, etc. I was a little bit surprised that Jacques Vaughn pulled the cord on it. And even though I understand going to Joe there for that little spurt, you could also make the case for going to Seth there, who in this series specifically has shown that he can create space for himself and get a shot off.
I was starring some of these comments. Sorry. The Seth Curry thing. Yeah. No, I think that I just think that they were trying a few different things. In retrospect, thinking about the Cam Thomas thing, it's not that surprising to me that he did that in this situation, because it was like, it's hard. It is hard to, after losing 2 games, to continue to go to the thing back again. So I'm not surprised that was like a rotational change, because it's like sort of hard to justify that on a base level. And I also think that it was like sort of close enough those other games that it wouldn't have been weird to me, but I get why that you wouldn't do it. So I don't have any faults really in like what they did rotationally in this game.
No, and I would just quickly say that they did do with Cam what we said we wanted them to do, is like, don't just bring him in for dumpster time, which there wasn't a chance for in this game. They brought him in with like a minute to go in the first quarter, then they let him bleed over into the second quarter. Like, use him in the rotation, not throw him out for BS minutes at any certain point there. So at least you're getting a sample size, and we did touch on it inside of it, and we'll get to the start comments you have there, but. This is important. It is a good taste. Like, it's a good taste to get Cam Thomas some playoff experience. So whatever it looks like, no matter what his shots look like, this is just good for his growth and for his development. Who has positively surprised you most in this series? Oh, that's a good question.
Like Cameron Johnson has been pretty good. I think that he stepped up into some of these moments here. He made some big shots. He shot okay, decent tonight. You'd probably like to see him take a few more shots. It's going to be tough for him. He's like not going to get off the dribble. None of these guys can. Like, no one can shoot off the dribble except for like sort of Mikal can, and not really Dinwiddie. And Cam really can't beat a lot of his defenders one-on-one. So he's kind of stuck being like spot up, catch and shoot for the most part. Got into the mid-range a couple times. But yeah, I think he's played pretty well. He's probably earned the contract. I think that like you saw enough from him that they're probably going to re-sign him. I think we already knew that anyway, but it's nice that he had a probably pretty decent series here Like that, I think him having a nice series makes it, whatever happens with this contract in the offseason, probably more palatable.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? Like I came out high off that game number 1, and I'll just throw in the fact that because I remembered watching the sequence with him and Nic Claxton, he had a really nice layoff pass to a couple of cutters as well. Picked up 4 assists in this game, so the overall stat lines for him look good, and they don't look, they're not fluffed. Like these are meaningful stats that he's putting up in these games. It's funny too because Nic Claxton, for as great as it was to watch him this one, remember they went completely away from him in game number 2. So that's something that is just kind of difficult for me to go fully like Nic Claxton taking the absolute next step. I expect that from him, but I think you'd have to see him be in these games with consistency all the way through to get fully on top of him. I don't think there's nobody else that really, I can't imagine anyone else that I would speak to.
I mean, I wasn't like surprised. I think Mikhail's played really well, and I'm not surprised by it. So I was trying to like pick out like this one. We discussed this for 7 minutes in the middle of the episode, so make sure you go back and listen. So we already touched on the Joe Harris thing.
I think they should have gone in. That was my thought.
Not sure who we're talking about here, but always apprecited. Could be you, could be me, could be the commenters.
Me, you, us.
Me, you, me. This was a longer one. Was that game? That game was awesome, atmosphere, and really fun to watch. I agree with you. It was a super fun watch. Do you think Mark's biggest mistake is not forcing an issue on backseat when they traded Harden for Simmons? I think he was going on to hear about Maxey too, about like not including Maxey in that trade. It is funny. I will say it is interesting. Well, one, I almost just kind of forget that Harden was on the Nets, to be honest with you. I don't know if it was like just forgettable or like when I watch him, I kind of just don't think about like any Harden moments. He was great when he was on the Nets, except for like the very final bit of it. It is funny that the legacy here is that like no one that came back in that trade played for the Nets in this game tonight. So think about like Simmons didn't play, Curry didn't play, and Drummond obviously left. It is weird to think about that trade on that level. I mean, it's obviously just has been an absolute F- for the Nets, but and I don't know if I'm sure Maxey was like never available in that trade. It would be my strong suspicion. Like I think that Morey would have stood the line there. But games like this do become referendums in that trade because like one guy has been playing and the other Nets have gotten like nothing from it. And it's nuts how that kind of has worked out.
Yeah, that is the add-in piece. Like, adding, I'm sorry, put that quote, adding in Maxey. But remember too, like it was also like the money part of that was kind of important as well. Like that's why Simmons, whatever you dreamed on he could be, he had a big old contract that you could go ahead and send back the other way when Harden was still on contract as well. So I mean, there's things about that, and I mean, hey, listen, I wish they gotten Maxey if it was on the table.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I just don't think it was, and I don't think the Harden situation. If you think about the as a comparison with getting Bridges for the Durant trade. I don't think they were in a similar situation with those two. I think the Sixers would have stood pat. Like I think they wanted Harden. I think the Harden would have come and signed with them anyway that next summer. So like I don't think that like.
I don't the willingness to amp up that season, but also having the option to get there. Anyway.
I mean, maybe he couldn't have because maybe they couldn't have traded They had to trade Simmons to get the money off. I don't know, whatever. I just think I don't think that other thing was ever going to happen. Let me see if I had a few more up here. This I thought was funny. Cam Thomas equals Fred VanVleet. I don't think I agree with that. But I thought that was I knew we'd get some Cam Thomas stuff in here. Cam Thomas is gonna be the most polarizing guy. Like for the Nets in a long time. It's really interesting about how that's really how that's shaken out.
And like we talked about him, it's like because of the lack of it, right? Because of the lack. If he played 60 games and played 15 minutes every single night, then you would at least know how you felt about him for real. I think a lot of people, maybe ourselves included, are thinking about what he will or won't be, as opposed to having the big sample size. This one, from Be With, it stagnates. Why? There's no reason to stop moving or I'm missing something. They don't have enough guys that can move. There's not enough guys that can be in motion on this team and then be effective because you have spot up 3-point shooters and players that don't have the shooting range, ability, etc. In all areas of the floor.
They came out in their first 2 possessions and were actually really, really active. They flashed Cam across the middle and then ran like a pin down for him. And then they were actually able to free up into a nice shot. And I was like, oh, that's gonna be interesting. Like, I wonder if they're going to do that the whole game. And that kind of just like slowly dissipated. I think part of that's like an energy thing to some degree. Like, I think these guys, it's easier to overlook, but you just get gassed. I mean, these guys played so many minutes and they're just having to put it in completely on the defensive end. Like no one can take anything off on the defensive end because everyone's just in constant motion. Like, have to stay fully connected with what they were doing with Embiid. So I think there is like a fatigue thing. And just remember, like, these minutes are way more than these guys typically play. I mean, 44, 43 minutes. These guys play a lot. That is a lot. I agree with you on the motion. It's easier to run motion when you have guys that have to be really incentivized to track you everywhere, like a la Curry. Like, Nets don't have much like that. And a lot of motion, to be honest with you, starts with initial breaking a guy off a dribble. Like, things look to be a lot more emotion when you have ball penetration or the threat of it, and otherwise it can look really stagnant. It's not a full excuse. Like, there's definitely more that could have been done here. It is easier to stagnate on offense when you do not have any guys that can beat anybody off the dribble. Like, it's just too easy. It's very, very easy to defend situations like that when you have a guy like Embiid that can wipe everything away. So anyway, I get it. I thought they came out and looked a little different and it didn't maintain it. I do think there's like a ceiling on what to expect with that kind of offense from this team.
This one I just thrown in there because do you envy Mark's job this summer to retool this team? Like, and I know that's an off-season thing and we'll get into it, but again, like, if we said at the highest level, it's a Mikal Bridges, check the box. Cam Johnson, check the box. Nic Claxton, check the box. Now, do 3 players make a roster? No, not necessarily. But if you have those pieces, I think the benefit now is, like we were talking about, stagnation, not being able to have a lot of off-ball movement, not being able to guys that can penetrate and force the defense to make adjustments. Well, now if this is the 3-man core, then you know the areas that you want to improve and build around them. So you hope there's some flexibility there. And we've said this before. I'll just mention again briefly. Ben Simmons is still going to be on this team. So part of the offseason retooling is going to be determining or us learning, like, what do they think about Ben Simmons? Is he going to be on this roster next year? Because he actually retools a lot of things that you want around these guys as we keep dreaming on him playing basketball again. Oh, that's a good question. This right here.
Yeah. Give it a pull, buddy. Give it a pull. Yeah, that's real.
Ahead.
That's real as it gets. That thing's luscious. That thing's luscious. And I know he wasn't talking about me because we got the
I will acknowledge. Thanks for bringing it up, Nick. I appreciate it. One of, I think, the biggest downsides to me having hair is my lack of ability or commitment to combing or maintaining it in any way, shape, or form. And it may be the biggest factor in why I still have it. So this is what we got. My brother didn't call me Lego hair my entire life for nothing.
I don't think there's any chance the Nets trade Bridges for like a Damian Lillard haul. I don't think that's I think that's the intention here. I think Bridges is locked in here. I think this for 2 reasons. One, he's played really well, and his contract is so sick right now. Like, you'd have to get so much. Like, his contract, he makes nothing for like what he does. I think he's like makes $26 million a year. I'll look real quick. But I think from that standpoint, like, he's one of the best after what he's shown in the playoffs. He's like legit one of the best contracts in the league now. So I don't think you're not really, yeah, he makes $20 million. That's like nothing for what he does. And he's team controlled and cost controlled to 25 million. Sorry, 25 million in 25-26. There's no chance they're trading him. No chance. Like, he's one of the best, frankly, one of the best pound for pound contracts and deals in the NBA for the money and the length and what he's shown now he can do. Like, no, there's no way. No way. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but like the 100% the sickest contract. Yeah. Sorry, one last thing. And even if he was like 80% of what he is now, the fact that he was the centerpiece of that Durant trade means they kind of just have to stick it. Like, they don't I think you just have to stick with it. But and he's made it easy because like he's been so good. So anyway.
But even if he was playing, he played to almost 30-point score in the regular season. If he played to 22, you'd still say, okay, but as we tweak this roster, he'll be better, blah, blah, blah. Like, you could still dream on it. He's checked that box for you 100%. And this is, I will say, it's the funny things. We've seen this. Trae Young and all the disgruntled, blah, blah, blah. Go do this, go do that. Give away the haul of it. Like the Brooklyn Nets, whether you're going to love to hear this or not, are going to be content to be a team that is like this, like what you saw, what you're seeing in this playoff series. Play teams really hard, they have talent on it, build, they have draft picks, they have capital. They're going to be able to rebuild this thing back up and be a playoff team. If you looked back 4 years from now, through the life of Mikal's contract, if you look back and said the Nets went to the playoffs every single year, which would then get them to 8 consecutive seasons and maybe won a couple of playoff series, that's a win for this organization as they're currently constituted. And then they have all the capital at the end of the 2028 and 29, and they'll continue to build this thing. Like that's what it was about. Getting guys that you feel like you can trust to be the face of your franchise for a handful of seasons and knowing that your team is not going to dumpster down into the lottery anytime soon. And so, yeah, I've seen the Dame. I love Dame as a player, by the way, but there's just not a world where I'm giving up this guy. I'm not giving up Mikal Bridges. He doesn't go out in a trade.
Yeah, I'm not sure Dame fits the timeline here either. He doesn't put you over the top. Like I don't think he wins you a championship. Not with the current way the Nets are formed. We'll talk about that. I'm sure we'll end up talking about this in the offseason. Because it's so funny about this. Actually, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, he wouldn't look bad. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Like, the team would be a 500 team or whatever, and they wouldn't go anywhere, and he would kill development on certain guys. But like, I was thinking, I don't know, play spread pick and roll 5-4 out with him, and if you could bring like the energy that he's been playing in the Sun series, which has been completely unhinged. But like, there's so many downsides. I don't know. By the way, I'm like not a Westbrook fan, but at all. But I was like, it wouldn't look terrible, but it would kill so many other parts of your team that you wouldn't do it. I don't know. It's funny though.
I remember
no
thinking
basketball
just
sense for it
back around the time because he's making an insane contract, right? And it was always like got
not anymore though. Not after this year.
No, that's what I mean. But I just mean like when he was, it was always like, dude, like, oh my God, he's insanely overpaid, whatever, and he has flaws to his game. But if you said this is a guy that's making $10 million, you'd be like, oh well, that's different. He still has flaws to his game, but it's different when you're a $10 million player as opposed to a $40 million player. So I do remember thinking
next year he's gonna be a $0 million. He's gonna be a $0 million player next year. He's a free agent. I don't know.
And imagine,
I don't think they're gonna do it. But I know Jay and I do not agree on a lot of things, or we have not agreed on some other stuff in like YouTube comments. But this one I was like, before I thought about this before. I thought about this the other day with the Suns. I was like, but I didn't want to say it because I thought it was gonna make me sound like a total lunatic. But
this isn't even a joke. I thought about it. I thought I had the same like little thought the other day, but it was like, don't say it on the podcast, Adam. Someone's gonna. I was like, my first fear was, I was like, Doug will totally kill you for that one. By the way, though, like a game like tonight, take the way Westbrook has been playing in the Sun series and put him on the Nets, like in a game like tonight, you'd be like, oh my God, this guy's a lunatic. Look at him. Like, he's like our pet monster. I'm worried about this one. I just think is funny because I'm worried about talking about the game plan, Jock Vaughn, in the regular season and playoffs, especially. I expect better media answering questions, especially from Greg Pop, from the Greg Pop umbrella. Well, if you want to go into that, just for sake of argument, he said he wanted the team to take 53s tonight. They took 30. So, like, yeah, he goes into a lot of detail. There's no actual concrete, information about whether or not it's legitimate or it's actually going to inform what they want to do. So I don't worry too much about that. And I prefer that over the absolutely no information or the Steve Nash, which made you question whether or not he'd ever played basketball in his life with some of his answers.
I don't think he gives much away. It's like obvious what they were doing. It's like they weren't like throwing some sort of rope-a-dope at the Sixers. Like they've done pretty much the same thing for the 3 games. They double. I actually thought I was wrong, but so I don't think Jock Vaughn gives away tons. By the way, and like I said, I don't think they weren't doing anything like below board here. It was like very obvious what the game plan was. I actually did think in the second half there was a chance. I thought there was a chance they would actually go back to single teaming, like just one-on-one defending Embiid before Claxton got kicked out once Harden had been ejected. Because I was like, at that point, you can bring help so much later because they had one less perimeter guy. They like Harden wasn't gonna be able to beat anyone off. Harden's gone to beat anyone off the dribble at the perimeter. Like the empty space in the interior doesn't matter as much when you have one less driver, like which Harden wants to do. I actually would have doubled him a lot less, especially around the 3-point line. I just that seemed to make increasingly less sense. And Yeah. Well, he was like that. I mean, Nash was the worst with this, but it just made increasingly little sense to like throw these Embiid doubles where they were doing it. Like they needed to wait like one more beat and let him get one dribble, then bring help. Like then bring help and do
But
whatever.
inside the arc.
I just thought they really missed an opportunity to. I would have changed their game plan at that point and just doubled him less once Harden was gone. I don't know, but they didn't do it, so whatever.
Yeah, I thought that he said like it's like the combination of all things that we've seen in the first 3 games. Because once Claxton was out, then they went back to the small ball version of it against Embiid. And I just think at some point you want to throw every one of these different looks and just continue to rotate the way that you approach it, just for the sake of stealing a possession or two out. But again, we're talking about a game. It was down to the last two shots. Like you can't knock what came that close to beating the Philadelphia 76ers.
Sorry.
Doug, we lost your mic there. Doug's got an audio problem. He'll come back in though. He's a pro, so he'll figure. I think maybe his headphones might have died on him possibly. So we'll see as he sorts that out. Bridges has to add to his moves this offseason. A post game with a turnaround fadeaway shot would make him almost unstoppable. I remember Doug mentioned about this as well. In terms of like we had said this in the regular season, just discussing like what does Mikal need to add to it? And Doug had pointed out, I was like, to bulk, add a little more size to him so he can play a little bit more physically. And that probably goes into any idea of playing with a deeper repertoire in, down, and around the basket. Frankly, his mid-range game is so strong that I don't really worry too much about that aspect of it. Again, I go back to roster construction and the other players that you have on it. You can have more space. You can create more room for guys to operate when you have the right combination of skill sets. So that still comes down a little bit to who you're going to have in.
Is my mic back? Am I back?
Hey, Doug.
I was trying to put the Kings Warrior. I don't put the games on the background on my other screen until we're done podcasting, but I was trying to cheat there a little bit by putting on Kings Warriors, and I got caught with my hand in the basketball cookie jar because it screwed up something with my sound when I put it on. So that was just to let you know how the bad sausage gets made over here. That's what happened with my microphone, and that was the end of that. Let's do a couple more.
Hold on, real quick here. I'm going to fire this one just real quick here. In a nutshell, did Claxton cost them the win tonight? Because I think they win this game if he doesn't get kicked out. Well, if he's not playing in this game, they're probably getting dumpstered by 15 points in the fourth quarter. So, no, he did not lose in this game. Without him, it's a lot worse because I don't think Day'Ron Sharpe was going to cut the mustard.
Wait, what do you mean? I think that no, aren't you agreeing with him that they win the game if Claxton keeps playing?
Oh, yeah. But he's saying cost them the win. Like, he can't cost you the win. Yes, he got kicked out, but he can't be costing you the win because if I'm saying like he's the only reason that you're in the game as well. Does that make sense? Like without him, you're not.
I think I think he's just saying from like the point of the ejection on.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. By the way, he has to be playing. Doug said it. He has to be playing that intensely in order to keep himself jacked up against Embiid, and all he had to do was turn the other way and make the aggressive gesture towards his own teammate, and he's still in there. So 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And by the way, still 23-year-old, and he's clearly like, I'll tell you what right now, I cannot wait to see next season for Nic Claxton because there's still another level of his game coming here, and that's going to be something pretty special to watch.
He took a little running hook floater over Embiid at one point where he was one-on-one with him, and I was like, oh, he thinks he can make that. That's interesting. He didn't make it, but it was interesting to me that I'm complimenting him here. It was interesting to me that he thought he could make it, like because I was like, oh, this is like one of the hardest shots in basketball to make, like over this guy, and it didn't go. But whatever.
I'm big on that.
The next 100 years.
I'm big on this dude. Yeah, he had the Nash one. Now he's got this one. You know what? It's hard to project that far out. We don't have the model yet for that, but I would take the under, not 100.
I say no. 100 years. If you said 200 years, I would have been probably. But 100 years.
Let me finish. 300 years.
Yeah, 100 years. I don't know. Let's just try to be realistic. Let's go like $125. $125 under, but not feeling amazing about it.
But not loving the odds. Not loving the odds.
Yeah, just like wouldn't bet my life on it. Wouldn't bet my life on it, but but like would definitely take the under because I feel like I will get my money back within 125 years.
I don't know. I can close. I can throw this one up too since we're talking Claxton.
Yeah,
You
I was
think
gonna say
they'll
no
be
to
making
this. I do not think he will. He's shown no. He's shown no. He's not shown anything that's part of his game right now. I don't think so. I will never say never. We haven't seen one example of it. Like,
I think what's more
and
just likely is like what you saw that, like you said, thinking that he could hit that shot over Embiid. Like he's shown the turn and face and take a guy at the basket. If that develops to a level where it's like, hey, that is a viable option on any given possession, that changes things because when he gets that ball, when he gets that ball in the half court set and he's just inside the arc, he can actually turn and face and say, I am a threat to take this ball at the rim, right? With consistency. And that opens up other things. So like that's probably the next step of his evolution.
if he was like a 70% free throw shooter, I'd say maybe. Right? Like if he was 73%, something like that from the free throw line, then I think you'd be able to like look at it and say, oh, there's something here that we can build off of. But he just doesn't, his mechanics just aren't very good. And so I just don't see it. It's not a knock on him. I just don't think that particular part of his game is coming anytime soon. So all right, we could probably get out of here pretty soon here. Gonna go watch these the Suns clips. Clippers without Kawhi tonight, which is a huge bummer. I hate these injuries. Warriors without Dre, which is like another one for him. But you want to talk about like we got like mini Draymond with Claxton getting kicked out of these, or with Claxton getting out of these games, but like Draymond getting kicked out of that game, like, or getting suspended was like, I mean, what are you doing? It was so egregious. Like he just has to know, like the spotlight's on him. It's weird, but
Draymond, yeah, he's incredible.
Oh, Draymond getting suspended for getting suspended for this game, and now the Warriors are winning right now. But who knows if they're able to stick? I guess like next week we can talk about like what our playoff, like how we've gone with playoff predictions. That might have been kind of rough. But I've had a couple things like incorrect here. Not this series. I got this series gonna get this series pretty much correct. But the other series has gone a little haywire.
I should note, so the one thing is that first of all, Draymond Green operates on another level, right? Because when he gets kicked out and suspended, you think that's critical to the Warriors being able to win this series. But they were losing those 2 games, right? So now he's inspired his team to go out and win game 3 without him. This is 3D chess that this guy fundamentally operates on. And the other thing I'll tell you is, man, listen, don't knock Nic Claxton, who in the month of February was 67% from the line. He was over 60% all the way down to the last few months of the season. I mean, this guy's getting together at the line. So
I got to tell you that number. I love Claxton. That number's wrong because he's gotten more extra shots at free throws this year because of lane violations.
Got one tonight too. Yeah.
I would love to look at the number, the anti-lane violation number, like, and see what the actual number is. It's definitely lower. So, anyway, I think Chip here meant bearable. So I'm going to rephrase this. Thank you guys for making the pain of being a Nets fan more bearable. You got it, Chip. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Much appreciate everyone that jumps into YouTube. I know these games are always rough ones. Good to hang out, virtually together here to some degree, and talk about Nets basketball. Adam giving the old virtual hug. We will be back Saturday afternoon doing the good work by jumping in. Win or loss, we'll be here. Following the game, go ahead.
Very, very, very quickly. Do you think that like everything that the Nets dumped into this game? Do you think that it's like that? This is just, hey, see you later on Saturday. That like it's everything you had.
No, I do think everything. I thought you're gonna do everything you got.
Everything you got. Everything you got.
That gets me. Adam does that from whatever movie that is. That gets me every damn time.
I love you, man.
What's that?
I love you.
I
man.
love you, man. Oh, man, Adam's done that to me 1,000 times since we've known each other, and every single time I get like an absolute huge laugh out of it. Any context, everything you got. I could see them winning. I could see them winning Saturday. I think this team does have fight in them. I think that they know that they were huge underdogs. I think that this does not change much. I think that there's a lot of. I think they generally dislike Philly, and so I think that kind of helps from an energy level. I could see them winning. I could see them not getting out of here in a gentleman's sweep. I think that this was a huge deflating game. I also think that they will not roll over. They are not. I don't think they have that in their DNA. I think Bridges is too hard of a fighter. I think Claxton's, got the right kind of screws loose. And like, I think that even like Dinwiddie, I just think that they'll play. I think that, so I do not think it'll be a huge blowout. I could see it getting chippy again. This game was super chippy. I think they're probably really pissed at Embiid. I have a feeling that they don't like how Embiid played in this game. He had some
sure.
really questionable plays.
That hip check thing on Claxton is one
check.
A dirty play, and two, like it probably infuriating to the Nets that like it doesn't even get called.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, the Cameron Johnson thing, they were kind of wrapped up together. He was an absolute flop machine. Like, I just think that there's a lot of context here that I think the Nets do not roll over. No.
Nice. I'd love to hear that from you. All right. We'll see you guys next time Saturday post game right here on YouTube. You know the deal. Podcast, YouTube. Do it all, guys. Really appreciate everyone for sticking out here and chopping it up with us for a while. We'll see you Saturday post game.